with myself, Rachel Patterson, and Pete Roque, of course. We have some awesome special guests who we'll get to here in just a moment that we'll introduce you to. But as you know, as everyone knows, Pete and I, along with others in our profession, try very hard to bring, relevant content, free content, and knowledgeable experts on our show to provide us whatever's going on in the world at that time. Provide us some information, provide us some information on things that are important to our profession, things that we can take with us, little golden nuggets that we can take with us to do our jobs better every day. So with that, what's going on in the world right now, it's a lot of heartbreak, a lot of mass shootings out there, a lot of things that we just don't really want to talk about sometimes. And in the code enforcement profession, we go out there, we do our jobs, we're boots in the field every single day, but we're also very aware of what's going on. We just don't often talk about it. We don't often have enough training on the matter either. So today we have some awesome guests. Pete has provided us some knowledge on this amazing group called Avert. And I'd love to introduce you our guests, and then I'll let them talk about themselves today, and we'll let Pete say hi at some point. So today, good morning with us. We have Anthony Corwin, director for Avert. We have Carrie Rios, who's an Avert instructor, and Hans Sievert, who is also an expert within Avert. So I'll let you guys go deep dive down into a little bit of what Avert is, but we'll let Pete say good morning first. So thank you everybody for being here with us today.
Thank you.
All right, I get to say good morning and welcome to season 3. This is our first show of this year. So this is Code Concepts, where we bring you interesting topics in the world of code enforcement and the building and safety environment. One of the reasons that we brought Avert on is because, they've been hitting hard and heavy on social media. I see them all over the place. I go to conferences and there they are with the little orange Nerf balls, one time I was walking by and I think Carrie shot me with one of them. She goes, "What are you going to do about it?" I go, "I don't know. I don't have a plan." So there you go, kind of taught a lesson right then and there. But, it's an interesting program. I learned about it through our state association, the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers, where they've been partnering with Avert for some time and offer this little nugget of officer safety. And the reason it's officer safety is because we're trying to keep our officers safe. And you know what? We use utility knives, and sometimes we're cutting off signs, and we might hit an artery or a vein or something like that. And you know what? We need to know what to do. In some instance, we be in a city hall when there could be potential danger out there. We serve sometimes as fire inspectors, where we may get stuck inside a situation where we may not want to be. So this is why it's important for us to bring folks like this to just bring awareness into the profession, things that can happen. We see stuff happen all over the news all the time, and I think it's very, very interesting topic. But with that, I'm gonna bring on the director of Avert first. And so we can get his little origin story and what Avert is, how it came to be. And then we'll hear from Carrie on her role as a code enforcement officer and her tie into Avert, and bringing it with Hans to talk about the first responder and Avert. So with that, there you go, sir. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, Pete, appreciate you having us. So my name is Anthony Corwin. I'm the director of Avert. Happy to be here today to share a little bit more about the program and kind of talk with both Carrie and Hans a little bit more about the program and what it brings to, I think, the community and those that out there that are in the profession that need this type of training based on what they're doing. So Avert quickly stands for Active Violence Emergency Response Training. We developed this program a little over 3 years ago with our experts who bring 30 plus years of law enforcement and medical backgrounds to really build a program that we thought brought tactical information, but put it in a way that I think was able to be delivered to civilians of all backgrounds and scales. So the goal with Avert was to be a proactive approach, knowing that what's going on in the world today, we see it in the news, and it's an unfortunate occurrence. It affects all demographics, all geographies where you have active violence situations, active shooter incidents, mass shootings. And we really want to give people an outlet to understand what options they have if they were to find themselves in that kind of situation. It's no longer that's never going to happen here or happen at my place of business. You really don't know. And we want to just give people the ability to understand what options they have if something were to happen. So we go through things like trying to understand how to recognize warning signs using situational awareness. We're all on our phones every day. You see people walking in and out of stores with their, head down, looking at their phone. Just the understanding of where you are, where you're walking into, what the surroundings look like. If you get that gut feeling, usually that is going to tell you something's not right. We want to explore that with those that go through the training to understand a little bit more about what to look for, how to recognize those things. Then we break down the run, hide, fight, which is put out by the Department of Homeland Security, but we call it escape, evade, attack. So understanding, given your situation, what is the best path for you to be safe? So how to run or how to escape, then how to hide, right? It sounds pretty basic, but understanding cover versus concealment. So certain things we kind of break down on where is the best place to hide to give you the best chance of survival. And then last and most important is, if you can't run and hide and you have a last resort, how do you fight? We do simple techniques to disarm somebody if that is a choice that you decide to make because you don't have the first two options. And then really, I think what sets the program apart from what else is on the market, that when we built it to try and really bring an added element into it, was to bring the bleeding control aspect. A lot of active shooter situations we see now, when someone is shot, and first responders, which I think Hans can go into a little bit more detail, when they get to the scene, their job is not to go in and render aid first and foremost. It's to make sure the scene is safe, and then to have first responders be able to get on the scene and render aid. And so we wanted to give people the understanding of how to become an immediate responder and how to use bleeding control techniques that we think are critical, not only in an active shooter situation, but in all areas of life, right? A car accident, et cetera. So one of the leading causes of preventable death is from bleeding. So we want to make sure that we are giving people a wide range of skills when they leave the class to take with them, to be aware of their surroundings, but also apply in situations that may not just be an active shooter situation. It could be a car accident when you're driving by, how to understand how to help that person with aid to help them while first responders are getting onto the scene.
Awesome. So
I think with that, it might be good for Yep, go ahead.
Oh, no. Normally what we do is, this is, when you started your journey with Avert, what was it that triggered you to like actually get involved with this type of training? Because it's, one doesn't wake up one day and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to work on active shooting and, protocols. But what actually motivated you to say, you know what, I need to get involved and I need to make it a national type of training that everybody can benefit from?
Yeah, so the parent company of Avert is one of the leading providers of CPR certification. So we have over 50,000 instructors that are teaching CPR every day to individuals, businesses, et cetera. And so we've been in the passion of trying to train people, give them the skills to save lives. And over the last probably 5 years, we've seen that unfortunate circumstance of just other areas that need more training. That, for my kids that are going to school, they're not being provided that life-saving skill that when I grew up in California, you had earthquake drills, right? So you learn how to prepare for an earthquake or fire drills, and then CPR is becoming more available for, all generations. We wanted to now take a next step and bring Avert to the forefront to give people, again, it's a proactive approach. We want to make sure that you understand what to do if that situation were to arise, not be in a situation where it happens and now you freeze because you don't know how to respond. So for us, it's always been a passion to take that training to the next level and give people the tools to go out there and teach those in their community, their colleagues, businesses, et cetera. So we all can hopefully benefit from everybody knowing what to do if a situation were to happen.
I do have to say, Anthony, this information is very helpful because a lot of times in our professions, we're talking specifically about code enforcement sometimes, but the code enforcement can live in a building department. Code enforcement can live within a police department. It can live within a planning and development department. So the tools in which we're offered are definitely different, to include the training that we're offered, right? I mean, I can tell you from my own experience being in a police department, they were very against us having any training like this as civilian staff. And I think, one of the things that's always come to mind for me is first and foremost, I'm going to be a human over understanding my role in society over, who's more important, a police officer or a civilian. We're not, it doesn't have to be that way. What would you suggest for those situations where, Hans mentioned it earlier in our conversation too, this has become the new thing. This is something that employers and municipalities alike really need to get on board with, that it's not just about CPR. And so as your company is moving towards that new wave, how do we get our municipalities and our employers to move that way as well?
I mean, the way we try and go about it is we try to take a proactive approach, right? We want everybody to have the knowledge. First responders are still critical to the overall kind of ability to render aid, but we want to give people the basic tools to help them be, to a point where when first responders do get on scene, they're in a much better position to help save that person's life. And again, it's life-saving tools. I think everybody should have the basics for as we go through our lives from kids in high school all the way up to professionals. Understanding how to put a tourniquet on somebody if they're bleeding to death is going to save their life. And we want to make sure everybody has that, because wherever you are, from a rural situation to a metro, et cetera, that response time could vary greatly. And so by giving those tools to everybody out there, understanding basic concepts is what could basically save someone's life. And we do it in a proactive approach where, again, it's a team building, it's empowering. This is not designed to scare people with active shooter situations, but we certainly want to make sure that people understand that this is a real occurrence. And again, it's not just in some other city, in some other area. This is affecting all of us. I'm sure at this point, nobody out there has not been aware of a situation or in a place that has happened somewhere else, right? Grocery stores, places of worship, schools. These are places that we're going every day. So our goal is really to try and get the message out there, put the training in our instructors' hands to really deliver it to the masses, to make sure everybody has that toolkit to know what to look for, how to kind of see things that if it's unsettling, to make that note and then tell somebody. And then if something were to happen, what can you do to hopefully help save yours and others' lives in that situation?
So here's a question, because I know we're gonna transition over to Hans, because as a first responder, he's more likely to deal with this on a daily basis versus, especially if he's doing fire, paramedic duties. He's likely to see this on a daily basis. One thing that you touched upon is that, I have children and my kids are training for active shooter, situations at school where I would have never have fathomed that growing up. Well, now it's a reality of life, and people have to prepare. And as adults, we need to catch up on some of that training as well. So, Hans, can you tell us a little bit on a little bit about yourself, a little background and how you got involved with AVERT, and also the kind of things that you see are beneficial to first responders out in the field when you're dealing with these types of situations?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Hans Sievert. I'm a lieutenant paramedic with the Warren, Michigan Fire Department. I've been there about 22 years. I'm an instructor, paramedic instructor, fire instructor, teach some technical rescue. So I've been training for years. I enjoy training, but I've been training within my profession. And how I got involved with AVERT was I've known Carrie Rios for many years, and she expressed to me that there was a need, when the code officer safety bill passed in California, that code officers need this type of training. So I approached my friend Darcy Lutzinger, who helped develop AVERT along with Lindsay Geetson. They're not here today, but they helped develop AVERT. He's an expert in law enforcement. She is an expert in the medical field. But I took the trainer for AVERT, and I was instantly impressed with especially the bleeding control. AVERT has something for everyone. I think anybody can benefit from AVERT. It doesn't matter if you're in law enforcement, the military, but really AVERT is designed for everyone, everybody, from every walk of life. And that's what's great about it. Everybody can get something from AVERT. And I am a big believer, especially in the bleeding control portion, because bleeding control it's like the new CPR. Everybody should know bleeding control. And the reason is that, I am a first responder. This is what I tell my classes when I teach AVERT. I'm a first responder, but I'm not there first, am I? It's not really accurate, right? If you're there when something happens, you're what we call an immediate responder, and you can save your own life or the lives of your coworkers or your loved ones. And, there was a study, Arlington County, Virginia, they developed a new protocol for fire department response, because fire departments are trying to respond quicker in these events, you know. But they discovered in this study, the doctor there in Arlington County, I think his name was Reed Smith. I'm probably getting this wrong, okay? But Dr. Smith found out during his study that over 20% of victims in his violent event, these active shooter events, these active violence events, over 20% of the victims could have been saved with early, simple bleeding control. So that's what's driven the fire department to try to get into these incidents faster. You know, the police response, their response now after Columbine and then all these events, their job is to stop the killing. The police stop the killing. And the fire department and the medics, we stop the dying. And the way we do that is with bleeding control. And you will learn the same things that we learned, the same exact thing. Because, you know, one, it's super effective. But also, we're just learning this too because this is newer. You know, I wasn't taught this 20 years ago when I went to EMT and medic school. And I tell my students the truth. In this 2.5 hour avert class, you will learn more about saving someone's life from uncontrolled, you know, life-threatening bleeding than I knew as a paramedic 15 years ago. You're going to know more because I was taught wrong. Everybody was taught wrong. I don't want to keep going. I know Carrie has to introduce herself, but yeah, I'm passionate about the bleeding control. I've seen this work because I use it, what we teach you in avert, but more importantly, I've seen it not work because we didn't do this for many years and we were wrong. And I've seen, you know, bad outcomes. So that's why it makes me passionate. I'm irritated. I'm angry that I did not have the right tools to maybe save some people that I could have saved. And maybe I can just, if I can train enough people and they can make a difference, then maybe that'll make up for in some small way, you know, my mistakes. And, you know, I wasn't taught right. You know, I was taught wrong and we know better now. So.
Knowledge is power, isn't it?
Exactly.
You know, I love that, Hans, and we appreciate that most definitely. And Carrie, you mentioned something while we were offline a little bit about how empowering this is. And I know, Anthony, you touched on it a little bit as well, but I'd love for you to go into a little bit more detail, Carrie, and introduce yourself and your background, but kind of touch on that, you know, what you were talking about as far as this being an empowering program and not scary and that information.
Absolutely, Rachel. Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. My name is Carrie Rios, and I've been in our code enforcement profession for over 18 years. I can tell you that, and I've been a part of CASIO, which is our state association in California, on the education committee for a long time. I've been passionate about training my entire career in code enforcement. And I can tell you that, you know, all of us have, you know, a lot of us have taken active shooter training. And I feel like, you know, we really didn't have, you know, somebody within our profession, you know, teaching this and talking about this and getting involved in the conversation. And when CASIO passed the safety bill in California, we started thinking about the different topics that would be important for our profession, and active shooter being one of them. When Hans reached out and told me that he knew about Avert, and he knew that Avert was successful and that it was an amazing program, Avert had the conversation with our association and decided to partner. When they partnered, we decided to have a train the trainer class because we thought this is a very serious topic. It's very hard to talk about. We wanted to see what it was about, and we took the class. We offered it to the membership and the code enforcement professionals throughout California. They came to the class, and after that, we had to train the trainer. We realized at that point that the best people to teach this, because it's so civilian based, is within our own profession. So there was about 7 of us in the state in our profession that did the train the trainer. And what's special about that is that when we speak about, you know, like Anthony said, you know, the program is about, you know, it starts out with teaching you what life-threatening bleeding looks like. Most of us don't know what that looks like. You know, it talks about situational awareness, how to be aware of our surroundings, you know, when we're out doing those inspections, when we're out in the field, when we're, you know, doing things in our daily lives with our families. It talks about what, you know, most of us we're finding when we teach this course that, most of us have never heard a gunshot. Most of us have never, smelled gunfire. Most of us have never held a gun before. So we teach a little bit about what that looks like, you know what I mean? And a little bit about what that looks like. We talk about bleeding control, which is important. And let me tell you why that's special to me and why I fell in love with the program as well, is because, I've worked for police departments. I've worked in our profession for a long time. I've been in the field. I've seen a tourniquet in police units. I never knew how to use one. I didn't know what one was about. I didn't know that it can save your life. I did not know that you can bleed out. Anybody can bleed out within 3 minutes. I did not know that. Just the hands-on training that we received in that instructor development course was amazing. To be able to put that tourniquet on and learn about the body and realize that you are, like Hans said, how to become that immediate responder, because all of us kind of understand what the response time is sometimes on events like this, right? On not just active shooter events, but any kind of, situation, we know what that response is. But to realize that and how empowering it was for me and eye-opening that I am and can be an immediate responder while I'm at work, any place that I go to with my family, if something were to happen, that I can be able to help stop the bleed and use a tourniquet and use other techniques if I don't have a tourniquet, like packing a wound and direct pressure. And these are things that I did not know, and I've been in local government for many years. The class is designed to really empower you. It is a scary subject. It is a serious subject. Life-threatening bleeding and saving someone's life and, violent events are scary to talk about, but they happen every day. You talked about, Rachel, being the boots on the ground. Yes, we are. Yes, we are boots on the ground. We see things, you know what I mean? We see things, we walk into situations that are dangerous sometimes. And having those skills within a 2.5-hour course, gaining those skills and that knowledge is so empowering. I loved the fact that AVERT wasn't scary, that it was empowering. One of the first things that we do, and we talked about this before we jumped on, is most of the instructors, and there's how many instructors, Anthony? There's about 1,600?
Yep, about 1,600.
About 1,600 nationwide. Most of us go into that class, and the first thing that we say is, how many of you have a plan if something were to happen in this room right now? And I can guarantee you maybe one person will raise their hand. And we tell them, by the end of this 2.5-hour course, you are going to have we're going to teach you some life-saving skills. And I promise you that most of you are going to raise your hand by the end of the course, and they do. And I felt like it was just so important, and KCO and the Education Committee for our state association believed that this was such an important topic, because we always talk about in our profession, what? Safety first, be safe. The best part about this is that we teach you how to be safe when you're out in the field and doing inspections, but you can take these skills and use them in your daily life. One of the best parts about it was I sat my children down and I taught them. And Pete, you talked about how they're teaching this in schools. If they're teaching this in schools, it's so important for your parents to know it as well. You know what I mean? And so we want to make sure that I wanted to make sure that my kids, if I'm teaching this to our profession, if we're teaching this nationwide and to other organizations, and I wanted to make sure that my family also is prepared if something were to happen. I was a freezer. I used to freeze. I used to freeze in danger. I did not have a plan. And now I have a plan, and I teach that plan, and I share that plan, and most of the instructors share that plan within our profession. And I just think it's such an amazing course. So, AVERT is a 2.5-hour course. There are many ways, but this is there are many plans, but this is, most people don't have a plan. And with AVERT, you leave that class with a plan, and a plan is better than no plan. I think keeping us safe, we always talk about officer safety. I think it's absolutely crucial that, we have this type of training in our profession.
So, Carrie, I got a quick question, because, some of us can say, hey, we never had an act of violence happen. And I actually have, also, I didn't freeze, and I had to do what I had to do to stop the bleeding. And it's funny because I learned that from, I think, a library, some Boy Scout in the library. And I wasn't even a Boy Scout. I just happened to be that ended up saving my brother's life. Also, when the Mandalay Bay shooting happened, I knew 5 people that were there and were literally pulling bodies. And a lot of people froze and they got shot. and a lot of people died, and and it's important to know. And I know that this isn't a training course, but can you give us a little piece of nugget of something somebody can do other than have a plan?
Absolutely.
When something happens, what's the first thing somebody should process when they start hearing gunshots? It should be concealment, should be
Yeah.
evading. What would you recommend, or what?
So what's being taught out there, what AVERT teaches is that, first of all, like I said, most people don't, we, in our minds, I was born and raised in East LA, so to me, if I hear gunshots, I think it's fireworks, right? You know what I mean? I think it's fireworks, and that's just the natural thing. Our brains don't want to believe that something like this is happening when it comes to an act of violence, right? An active shooter event. Our brains don't want to believe it at first. So, to be aware and to know the difference and to not take it for granted that it is fireworks, to recondition your brain to say, you know what? This is my opportunity to take some action, take some cover, conceal, do what I need to do, protect my family, find that exit. One of the, you talked about some nuggets, right? The nuggets are when it first starts with prevention, right? When you walk into anywhere you go, we don't expect, I don't expect, and we don't teach to be paranoid everywhere you go, but to have that plan. Look for those exits. Look for the exits. Naturally, what our brains just are designed to do is we will go out and gravitate towards that same entrance that the entrance that we came into. But there are other exits, and there always is, and that's why the building code is important. You know what I mean? So there are different exits. You know what I mean? So just be aware of your exits. If it's through the kitchen, if it's is there another exit? Being situationally aware in everything that you do is important. Put your phone down. Those are some of the situational golden nuggets, right? Put your phone down when you walk to the car. Say hi to people. Say hi to people. Let them know that you've seen them, especially when you're by yourself. That's something that I learned through the program. Let them know, hey, I see you. If you have your phone down and if you have your head down and you're looking at your phone when you're walking to your car, you are a potential victim. You're a target. Some of the things that I learned in the program also were, there are things that we can do in our daily life to be more safe. One of the things that I learned that I was so in wow about was, we go through these drive-through ATMs, right? We go through drive-through ATMs, not realizing that we are such a target, and this happens a lot. We're between two concrete, slabs, and your door can barely open so that you can get the money that you need. Somebody could just come and block you in, and you're a target. So get out of your car. Go to the ATM, go into the bank. That's something that I learned through the program. Golden nuggets is, when it comes to bleeding control, you learn how to use a tourniquet. It's one thing to learn how to use a tourniquet, but have a tourniquet with you. I travel with a tourniquet now. I, have one in my car. I make sure that my officers, at the city that I work for have them now, because it's one thing to have it, you know what I mean? It's one thing to learn how to do it, but to be able to, use it, you look at a tourniquet. I don't know how many, code officers that we taught. We've taught hundreds of code officers. They look at it and they're like, wow, I've never even touched one of these. So to get your hands on it, that's one of the golden nuggets in the class, that actually, in person, hold it and use it and manipulate it and learn about it. That's a golden nugget. So those are some of the things that we teach.
And as
Carrie, you are.
Go
ahead.
Oh no, I was going to ask. This is a question for Hans, and in regards to first responders, and when he actually shows up, whether or not continuing education and this type of training, how important is it? But Rachel, go ahead. You had your question. I apologize. So.
All right. I want to hear what Hans has to say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we are just learning this. The techniques that AVERT teaches is the new national standard. It came about from the global war on terror, because prior to that, all medics, military medics included, we were taught that tourniquets were last resort. We didn't really concentrate on bleeding control so much as we call it volume replacement, right? So if somebody was bleeding, we put a large, called a trauma dressing, which is like a very large absorbent dressing. We would put that on that injury. And then we would start IVs, and we'd give saline, IV fluid. And that would replace the volume of blood that you were losing, which would compensate for your blood, raise your blood pressure, and we'd get you to the hospital. But actually what that does is, I tell my students that, everybody's seen blood. It's that deep, rich red color, because everything that you need is in that. That's why it's that color. It's got the clot. Your body's trying to form a clot when you're bleeding, electrolytes. It carries oxygen, right? Everything you need. IV fluid, everybody's seen an IV bag in the hospital or on TV. You can see right through it. It's absolutely clear because there's nothing in there that you need at that time. But that's what we were doing. We were giving people IV fluid, and we were just diluting the blood that they really need. So now what we found, well, I can't claim credit. I didn't find out. I mean, I know it because I've seen it, but what the military found was that the best thing that you can do pre-hospital is keep your blood or the victim's blood inside them where they need it. And we didn't really concentrate on that. We were concentrating on doing advanced interventions, it's called, because I'm a medic. So I pride myself, hey, I'm going to start an IV. I'm going to give medications, all this stuff. But that doesn't really save lives pre-hospital. There's things that we teach and the things that you can do as an immediate responder, stopping the bleeding fast, using that tourniquet, using direct pressure effectively, not just putting a big absorbent bandage or a towel or something that's going to just let them continue to bleed into it on top of that injury, but actually getting pressure to that site of bleeding directly. If you don't have a tourniquet or using a tourniquet, that is the most effective way to save lives. So you're going to buy us the time that we need to get you to the hospital, because trauma is a surgical disease. Trauma requires a surgeon to repair that damage. But if you don't get to the hospital in time, then what's the point, right? Like, before we were taught don't use a tourniquet because their leg might fall off, their arm might fall off because of the damage from the not having any circulation. But if they do not survive, what is the point of saving their leg? And studies have shown that a tourniquet, you can have a tourniquet on for hours with no ill effects, as far as the tourniquet causing any problem. So we're kind of relearning everything. It is a new national standard, and it's all very simple. Everybody can learn it, and you're going to help us out because you're going to give us a patient, that we can get to the hospital, and then the surgeon can do their job, we can do our job. But if we don't have a patient to work with, if they bleed to death first, there's nothing we can do. So that's why it's so important.
Thank you, Hans. That's a big picture view of, something that we don't necessarily look at. So I appreciate that view of it. And real quick, I wanted to go back to you, Carrie. Like Pete and I talked about, we try to bring relevant, useful information and training to our everyday code officers, building professionals, so on and so forth. So when we kind of bring it back down to that, I like what you said is you get so excited about this program. I just think it reinvigorates my desire to want to go out and find these type of trainings for my own group too. So talk a little bit about that. When you bring in AVERT to your particular municipality for your folks to utilize this training aspect, is it a 2-hour training, a one-time thing? Do you bring in AVERT every couple of months? How does that look for you and your group in your municipality?
Sure. So most municipalities, will bring in AVERT. I do want to say that when the best part about it for me, bringing it to the profession and working with the association and AVERT together is that this class is taught by our own profession. It's taught by code enforcement officers because this course is for everyone. It's very civilian based. And when we bring it to municipalities, it is a 2.5-hour course. When we're done, at the end, we have a scenario where we institute everything we learned during that 2.5 hours, and then we have a scenario. And when we're done with that, everybody is high-fiving and cheering, and it's a little bit emotional because you realize at that point, that everybody has a plan and everybody's empowered. Yes, I am excited about this program because it is empowering. It's something that we don't talk about in our profession. Jurisdictions usually will bring us on or bring AVERT in and do the 2.5-hour course. They get certified. So every 2 years, if they feel like they want to bring it back, then we recertify. As you know, things change, and as you know, you can hear by what Hans is saying. Techniques change, best practices change. So to come back in 2.5 years and talk about any of those changes is important, just to keep everybody on the same page, and also to check in. To check in with everybody to make sure that everybody, hopefully no one's had to use the skills that we teach. That's not what we want, but we want them to be prepared. But we also want to discuss it. In our profession, the best part about having a code enforcement officer, manager, supervisor, or anybody in our profession teach this is we know what you see out there on a daily basis. To hear it from us, and then to be able to, during the training, share some situational awareness tips with each other, share what we've learned is probably my favorite part of the class after situational awareness, where we all share in that same room. We share knowledge. There's one thing about, there's one thing when an instructor comes up and then they're teaching you, but when you engage the class and you allow them to share with each other in our profession, that is very special for us. It's officer safety. And, we're sharing with the new officers, what we can do to stop life-threatening bleeding, but we're also sharing a lot of situational awareness with each other at that time, where to park, what to look out for, animals, all of this, the officer safety topics. And we're also sharing our experiences. A lot of us have a lot of experience and have seen it happen. I was carjacked. Pete, this, I was carjacked when I worked for a city, that changed my world. And I became more aware. And I share that story with the officers that are in the class because I want them to know that we've all been there. We've all put ourselves in a situation, and we got to be aware.
And like you said, Carrie, a lot of us practice, like, let's say jujitsu, you learn how to choke people. You don't go around choking people. But,
Right.
Should you have to defend yourself, you have a plan of action. And, there's always that saying, everybody has a plan until you get hit, especially with boxers. But you know what? Actually having some sort of knowledge to kind of adjust and, take those like seconds to make those corrections could save lives. So we appreciate that. So, and I want to bring it back to the director as far as where he sees Avert going to in the next couple of years. So I'll bring it over back to you, sir.
Yeah, so I think with Avert, again, we want to find those individuals out there like Carrie and Hans, right, that have a passion to want to take this training to their local communities, businesses, their profession, et cetera. Like Carrie mentioned before, we have about 1,600 instructors nationwide. They run the gamut from law enforcement officers to military veterans to teachers, paramedics, et cetera. We built the course to where we want people that have passion to take this training and take it out to the masses, because that's what's going to make the difference, right? Everybody knows what to do. It's going to help that process going forward. It's a one-day instructor course that you would go through. We have nationwide to become an instructor. You don't have to have a background with handling weapons, et cetera. We do some disarming in the class, but that's not a requirement where you have to have experience of how to handle a weapon. But we want people to understand and see some of the techniques that you do with not only watching the drills in the course, but then actually getting hands-on, right? And then training a little bit so you get that muscle memory about how to put a tourniquet on. We've all probably seen a tourniquet on TV on a movie, but it doesn't mean you know how to put it on right away when that emergency happens. So we go through the class, we actually give people in a minor stressful type of scenario to make sure that they can do it a few times. And that when they walk in the class, like Carrie and Hans can admit, is the first time they put a tourniquet on, it might take them 30 seconds, right? But that last time at the end of the class, they're getting it done in like 8 seconds. So, and then they see that over time and they start to build that confidence that, hey, I could do this and I can do this now. Same with the simple disarming techniques. We want to give people that empowering that, hey, if I had to fight and I only had one option, I could disarm somebody with just simple leverage techniques. We're not doing anything too kind of fancy, et cetera, but we want to give people the basics. So in that emergency situation, you go back to the basics, the basic fundamentals of the training that we provide, that it's going to kick right in and then the instincts take over. So again, we want to just grow Avert as big as possible because it's important for everybody to have these skills in an everyday scenario, just to improve your situational awareness. You start walking into a building, you realize, do the doors open inward or do they open outwards? Do they have locks on them? Things that I wouldn't have even noticed before, that now when I walk in somewhere, like Carrie mentioned, going to a grocery store, you look around, you kind of see the entrance, the exits. you pay a little closer attention to things that maybe before you weren't even aware of. We want that heightened sense of awareness for everybody. I think that's just going to make everything a little bit more safer and people a little bit more aware of their surroundings, and will hopefully dispel some of the situations that take place if people are a little bit more aware of what's going on. So that's really where we want to take it. We're excited to have Hans and Carrie, and the passion they bring is like all of our instructors, right? You teach and you do it because you're passionate about it and you want to help get that information to those out there. And so that's what really kind of makes the difference for us, to find those instructors that have that they want to take to their communities and kind of professions all over the country.
Yeah. Anthony, that's awesome. I mean, big picture, it's great for everybody, but I'm super excited because it's, like Carrie said, it's not something that we talk about in our profession. It's not something that, we really have an opportunity to really get our hands dirty in. We get the more verbal judo. We get the, oh, you guys really don't deal with, the odd characters, when we all know that we do, deal with those odd characters. So I really appreciate the conversation, back to the basics and understanding what it is and what it can do for us. I think right now is a great time to have this conversation too, because a lot of departments are deciding what kind of training is going to be helpful for our department moving forward through the year. Getting those budgets together for, having that pot of money. Okay, so now what are we going to spend that on? So like I said, I really appreciate having that conversation this early in the year to give some individuals in our profession and all the others that these podcasts touch, because like you said, big picture, this is for everybody. This is awareness for everybody. But like I said, with Carrie's excitement and with everything else, I'm just super excited that it touches, what we do. And it's so important to what we do as code enforcement officers.
So, Carrie, I think that's why Carrie went last, because I know she was going to be super excited. She was going to just If you guys know Carrie, she loves to talk. I love Carrie. This is why she's here. But, so the question for the panel, how does one, want this type of training? How does one pitch it to their supervisors? Or, because sometimes we have, we have supervisors out there that say, that doesn't apply to us. That's never going to happen to us. Or, so how does one pitch it to a local jurisdiction or organization? How does one do that?
I think the civilian, so when we pitch this, it's a civilian based, not a civilian based training. It's for everyone. And it doesn't just teach about active shooter. You learn so much more about situational awareness within our profession. You learn bleeding control techniques. You learn what an immediate responder is. If you were to ask anyone in our profession what an immediate responder is, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you. I think one way is like, look, if something were to happen in the field, are our officers prepared? Do they know how to use a tourniquet? Do they have that bleeding control kit? Do we have them in City Hall? Do they know where they're at? Most local jurisdictions will have a bleeding control kit or a, next to the AEDs or wherever it's at, do we know where they're at? We often sometimes walk by the bleeding control kit in the middle of a hallway in City Hall, and our officers don't even know what those are. It's important for us to get in there and talk to them. You can have active shooter, but this is active shooter training, which a lot of us get. Which is really good training, but this includes the bleeding control portion, which is absolutely important. We want to be a support to our police departments. We want to be a support to our first responders. You know what I mean? If we were there, we can help them while they secure the scene. So if we were in that, violent event, we act as an immediate responder. So I think educating them and having a discussion with them about what an immediate responder is and how they can take these skills, and not only in our profession or as an employee, but they could take them and they can use them in their daily lives. And really what we're doing is we're empowering people to save lives. And that's super important.
So, Carrie, I had a quick question. So would you say AVERT would be an enhancement to first aid and standard CPR? So it's an enhancement because it includes, bleeding control and also active shooter. Would you say, is that a fair statement of why this is a little bit more enhanced or advanced over just standard first aid that they offer at the local library?
Absolutely. I'll defer that to Hans because he also is a CPR instructor. And so, he can probably answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Bleeding control, avert. It's the new CPR, right? Everybody should know it. You should know CPR. You should know the Heimlich maneuver, and you should know bleeding control, and probably active violence, unfortunately. So it absolutely enhances it, and it takes it to the next level. And it's just a way to harden our population, right? Because honestly, unfortunately, we're all on the front line. We're all on the front line. We're all first responders now, and we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our family, our coworkers, to be an asset, right? And to be able to help in any situation, anywhere, work, at home, when you're on vacation, make yourself a harder target. And our population, we need to be resilient and have these skills. And it's not to scare you; it's so that you can go out and enjoy your day, but with the confidence that I can respond if the worst were to happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Hans.
Put it. That's a really good way to put it. I mean, it really sounds, what I'm collectively hearing from all three of you is it's about empowerment, really, is it's empowering us all to do our duty to just be humans. I mean, we kind of think some of this should be common sense, but if common sense were common, everyone would have it, right? And then just understanding that we're all capable to be immediate responders. And the takeaways from that and understanding what an immediate responder is. I know Pete put it up on our chat here, and I want to talk about it just a little bit before we let you awesome folks go here in the next 10 or so minutes. But the website, like, what an awesome website. I mean, Pete sent that to me, and there's just so much information. Talk a little bit about all the other things that Avert has to offer really quick.
Yeah, so like we said with Avert, I mean, it's one of two ways. Either you can contact us to schedule an Avert class, right, where we will then leverage our instructors like Carrie or Hans or wherever you are geographically to come out and teach that class. Or if you see the benefit or opportunity to where you want to become an instructor, right, we have classes all over the country that we host that you can take that path to become an instructor. When you do become an instructor, we give you all the tools you need to teach the class. So it's video-based with all the hands-on techniques. You learn how to do that in that one-day instructor development course. But we go through the website. We kind of provide information about different industries and why Avert is important. Again, the techniques you're learning apply regardless if it's in a grocery store, in your church, in a school, in your home. But we obviously see there's different avenues. We kind of provide some stats that are released by the FBI and Secret Service that talk about where active shooter incidents are taking place, right? And it runs across the board, but for businesses, they're probably the one that happens the most. And just the impact of what a business could go through from an employee standpoint, from a brand standpoint, the training that you're going to get is a couple hours of your day to take these skills that are going to last a lifetime, right? And then you can take that home to your children or your family. But we really want to give people an outlet that either to have us come out and do the training, or if they see the benefit of becoming an instructor, we want to give them that process too, where they can become now an authorized instructor and take that going forward. So, yeah, we try to create we got some videos on there, some testimonials that are pretty powerful to see people talking about the Avert program and what it's meant to their organization or from their background, and why Avert is one of the best programs out there that brings all the tools into one kind of package. Whereas, like Hans talked before, there's a stop the bleed class, or there's a bleeding control or first aid. We try to bring all the key concepts into one 2 to 2.5 hour class, which there's a lot going on, but you walk out, like Carrie kind of mentioned too, just empowered, right? I haven't seen anybody that walked out of a class that didn't say this was the best class I've ever had, and they got something out of it that maybe they had no idea about before. And so we really want people to walk away from Avert feeling like that's a great class. And a lot of our instructors are people who took the class that now want to become an instructor, now want to take that knowledge going forward. And so that's a testament to us that the class really brings something that gets people passionate going forward. So
yeah, if I can echo off of
Yeah.
If I can echo off of that really fast for our profession, bringing this to the profession and becoming an instructor was empowering. We talked a lot about that word empowering. The mission here is to get as many code officers that we can certified to instruct on this topic, because the more we share this program, the more lives we're saving within our profession, families. I mean, it is so powerful. So, you know, when we brought it and we talked about it, and Hans brought it, and Darcy brought it to the association, and the president partnered with Avert, you know, it started going, you know, statewide. And a lot of officers want to get certified in this. And if you contact Avert, you know, we will host an instructor training course where we can get more of us talking about this, more of us qualified, more subject matter experts out there in our profession to teach this. It feels so good to hear from us, our profession, our people, you know, when we're teaching this. So the more people that we train, the more people that become instructors, the more lives we're saving.
And, you know, I had a quick question. So, and this is more for Anthony. What would you recommend that refresher course? Because I can tell you, I took CPR years ago and I don't remember anything. So what would you say recommended? And also, how are you partnering with these different associations to get them CEUs? Because this would be something great that I would want to bring over to ICC in our group and say, hey, you guys can get training on some first aid, some active shooter stuff, and offer some continuing education units to better make them better officers, better rounded, and things like that. I know Rachel was an ammo control officer as well, which this could be a very instrumental when it comes to dog bites, or, you know, and I know she dealt with a lot of, you know, some transients where, you know, you never know what's going on. So there's a lot of multitude of different facets that we can explore. But those are kind of questions that I would have. Rachel, do you have any additional questions?
No, really, I wanted to know a little bit more about, you know, you talked to Anthony about the one package. And the other thing I wanted to mention to folks, if you get online, you know, there's other resources available on your website that are extremely helpful. So say I'm the training liaison for my department, you know, and I go to a website like yours. Yes, you offer the training, but you also offer the resources. Can you speak a little to that? So let me back up. Actually, you know, we had mentioned when you're in a police department or different, you know, departments throughout the municipality, you have access to different tools, right? You may not have access to those tourniquets, but if you read online at getavert.com, you talk a little bit about that. Can you mention that before we get offline a little bit?
Yeah, so on the website, so in the class, we talk about bleeding control kits, which Hans kind of mentioned before, how important it is. So it's a simple kit. They all different shapes and sizes. They've got tourniquets in them. They got, you know, gauze, stuff to pack a wound, etc. So we obviously sell those, but whether you buy ours or you buy another one, the important one, the one that's going to be the most valuable is one you have on you when you need it, right? So it's like an AED. There's lots of brands. The most important one is the one that's going to be close by that you can actually use if there's someone suffering from cardiac arrest. So we certainly have TAC packs. As an instructor, certainly that's a part of the course we talk about, just understanding what a bleeding control kit is. It's not a first aid kit, very different in terms of what's involved. So you may have a first aid kit on the wall, which is great, but that's not going to help you if someone has a life-threatening bleeding situation. So bleeding control kits, as you walk through now, larger venues or airports, you start seeing them now more often, whereas probably 5 years ago, you wouldn't see bleeding control kits on the wall next to an AED. That's becoming now a lot more popular. But we still encourage businesses, schools, you know, I carry this in my car, right? Wherever I go, it's easy to carry around. Carrie has her tourniquet. You learn to just that's a critical thing to have with you. So obviously we want to provide those resources and avenues to get those. I think to some of the questions that you had, Pete, I mean, I think we all would argue that the more you can do something, the better at you're going to be, right? So I'm not advocating that you should do an Avert class every month or every couple months, but the skills you learn are pretty simplistic in terms of once you understand how to do them. I don't think it's going to require, you know, a monthly type of refresher. But if you are a code enforcement officer or you are a business, you have new people that come into the profession all the time, right? So you should always want to make sure that you're covering and getting everybody that same training, because everyone should know what to do, because it's never going to be potentially a team situation, right? Where there's all of us, we're all going to decide, and one's going to take the lead and be the one that's going to help guide everybody else. You want everybody to have that knowledge. So I think the more that you can have the trainings to incorporate those that are new, that haven't had it before, it's a 2-year certification, because we think that's the right time frame, that the skills before you need to have them. But I think, like I mentioned before, is stuff's changing, right? We want to make sure that the Avert course continues to evolve as we learn more in the market and things that go on, so we can keep Avert on top of the spectrum in terms of bringing the most recent either information or the guidance that we're getting from like the military, et cetera, on where they're bringing stuff back from a medical standpoint. And then I think as far as CEUs, we're always looking at working with organizations. So if that's something you're seeking, again, every state, every county, every industry is a little bit different on how they handle CEUs. So we're certainly open to working with any agencies out there to help get them the information so they can submit it to seek out continuing education units, because I know that's obviously a critical component. If you can get the training and get some of the continuing education units that you need to get on an annual basis, we want to try and help make that avenue as easy as possible, so those that can see the course can see the quality and the value that would be a great avenue to get continuing education if you are a professional that needs that. So
Great. Thank you, guys. I particularly appreciate the information because, like I said, with a lot of code enforcement departments, building safety departments out there right now, we're looking into trainings for the year, filling our slots, utilizing our funding. And I think this is a great opportunity to get folks to remember that this is the type of training that we really need to keep forefront in our minds, that we can have the other fluffy training and everything is great, but there are some of those trainings that we might be a little bit more apprehensive to take, but nice, Pete, a little bit more apprehensive of. But when you have 3 individuals like yourselves, excited about it, and it truly just empowers us to want to do more. So thank you so much for coming on the first of our newest season of Code Concepts today on this beautiful Friday, February 24th. So thank you guys from me. I'm really grateful to have you on today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
And I just want to say thank you again. Also, one thing I am going to do a shameless plug for the Women Leaders in Code Enforcement. It is next month. It is the 3rd annual Women Leaders program in San Diego. So if you guys can make it, please make it out there. A lot of great sponsors, a lot of great events, a lot of great speakers. So I really encourage anybody to check out the website, WLCE.net, and just please check it out. Plenty of opportunity and CEUs available. Also, some online content that we've been putting together with different vendors and different industry experts like attorneys and leadership folks. So with that, Rachel, thank you for a great co-host. Always, it's great to see you. I haven't seen her for a while, so I'm super excited. Yeah. So and Carrie, thank you for calling and saying, hey, you know what, let's do this. And you know what, it was a very, very interesting topic. I love it. I'm looking forward to working with you and the Avert group in the future. So thank you, everybody, and I want everybody to have a great day. So enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Happy Friday.
Thank you very much.
Happy Friday, y'all.